I honestly cannot believe it's been 5 whole years since Uncharted 4: Thief's End made its PlayStation 4 debut on May 10th, 2016. The PlayStation poster child is the second best-selling game on the PlayStation 4 with 16 million sold after Grand Theft Auto V's domination with 20 million. But even after all these years, it's an incredible accomplishment and a marvel to look at and play. Naughty Dog have poured their heart and soul into the game, but it wasn't an easy task. In fact, it had a very rough development cycle, and that's the perfect place to start. Once Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception hit store shelves on November 1st, 2011, preliminary work on the fourth game soon began. The fourth installment was first teased in November 2013, around the PlayStation 4's release, simply under the name of Uncharted. But the fourth game's development would be a rocky one. Mainstay writer and director for the Uncharted series since its beginning, Amy Hennig was hard at work on Uncharted 4, but creative differences prompted her to move on from the series and Naughty Dog themselves. But the truth of why she left has been kept under wraps, and sometimes that's just how it is. Neil Druckmann and Bruce Straley of The Last of Us developmental fame would take over, with the two scrapping around 8 months of work from Hennig, causing further limitations on development time while changing the story. But when you think of it, it's easier to start from scratch than to pick up someone else's work, especially during development. Different directors and writers have different styles, and for Nathan's big finale, we wouldn't want to see that shift in the game. See, Amy Hennig wanted to make Uncharted 4 a bit different than the previous 3 games. Large sections of the game were to have Nathan without a gun, and his brother Sam, who was always planned to be in the game, was meant to be the villain, but would eventually turn good. It's Sam who we hear in the teaser for the fourth game, with a grudge toward Nate for leaving him to rot away for 15 years in prison, most likely in a similar event to what happened in the final product, or maybe Nate had a darkness inside him, one that would have remained secret till then. The game was still set to be in Madagascar and revolve around pirates, so elements of what was originally developed was there, but for Druckmann and Straley to take the lead, they would have to have complete control, and after the massive success of The Last of Us, of course their request was approved. At the heart of Uncharted, it's always been about well fleshed out characters you actually like, and the development of Uncharted 4 went in with the main theme of relationships by telling a meaningful human story with complex relationships, with the relationship between Nathan and Elena as a central focus, humanizing them further than previous games. The power of the PlayStation 4 allowed for larger, more lush environments that were still linear, but could be explored with the texture resolution 4 times larger than what was seen in Uncharted 3, with the single-player mode running at 30 FPS and the multiplayer at 60 FPS. But with new hardware, Naughty Dog feared they would make the same mistake as they did going from the PlayStation 2 to the new PlayStation 3 hardware at the time, which made development of Uncharted Drake's Fortune difficult. However, the remastered release of The Last of Us on the PlayStation 4 in 2014 helped the team gain an understanding of the architecture of this new system. The full title of the game, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, was revealed at E3 2014, signaling the end for Nathan Drake, and whether that resulted in his death or not, players wouldn't find out until release. Originally set to release late 2015, it was pushed back numerous times for polishing until its final release on May 10th, 2016. It's likely Naughty Dog learned from an acknowledged mistake of setting a definitive date for Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception almost a year in advance of announcement, and struggled to cram everything in before its release. All original voice actors returned to their respective characters, but new voice actors were either cut or replaced when Druckmann and Straley took over, as shown by Sam's original voice in comparison to his new voice. Controversy arose in the reveal of a new character, Nadine Ross, who is black, as she would be voiced by veteran Laura Bailey, who isn't. This would prompt a larger discussion in the community as to whether voice actors should be allowed to play characters of different ethnicities if they weren't of that origin, a conversation that's still going on till this day. Upon release, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End received universal acclaim with multiple special editions and the fancy PlayStation 4 console. It would also receive a re-release under the Greatest Hits line, while its multiplayer component received continued updates until the first half of 2017. The series were going to have its first single-player DLC, inspired by the success of The Last of Us Left Behind. This DLC, however, became too big and ambitious, eventually releasing in August 2017 at the lower price under the title Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, which starred Chloe and Nadine. As for my views, I can certainly remember Uncharted 4: A Thief's End being one of my highly anticipated games of 2016, and I certainly wasn't disappointed. I've been a fan of the Uncharted series ever since I got my first PlayStation 3 in 2009, with Uncharted 2: Among Thieves being my first PlayStation 3 pre-order from GameStop. The nice aspect about playing the Uncharted series is that its mechanics are familiar and simplistic, yet don't necessarily feel repetitive and complex, and perhaps this is due to the beautiful environments, or the well-written characters, or the amazing story as a distraction. Seeing how Uncharted 4 came after The Last of Us, it's clear how aspects of The Last of Us roll into Uncharted 4. From the style of the main menu, to the large optional stealth sections that could turn into firefights, to a more personal story between the characters, there's a lot that Uncharted 4 took from The Last of Us. The idea of marriage isn't commonplace in video games. Relationships are common, but seeing a character with a wedding ring on and having marriage issues is a rarity. It's something that we should see a lot more in video games. I love the new gameplay elements that they included, like the grapple, which adds some nice new verticality that I've only experienced in a few Tomb Raider games, and this offers new ways of finding hidden treasures. Larger environments allow for greater exploration, while still containing a linear path, and the amount of detail devoted to each section is so incredible, and it's never tiring to find something new. The addition of vehicles for certain levels changes the pace of the game sometimes, allowing players to pursue at their own leisure, while not being complicated to maneuver. Combat is still powerful, as well as gunplay with a variety of guns and combos to execute, but a shift from this common Uncharted trope at the end of the game for a sword fight feels like the developers want to do something cool and grand for the finale, but ends up just throwing everything out the window, making the player learn a new playstyle way too far into the game. One feature I really miss that was introduced in Uncharted 3 was the ability to throw grenades back at enemies. I can't tell you how many times I used it in that game, and it was certainly life-saving at times. So when I went into Uncharted 4 and found out that they actually didn't have it, and that I still had to either jump or run or roll out of the way to avoid being blown up, I was saddened by it. Even to this day, I'm still on the fence about Nathan having a brother. It works, but for Sam to come out of the blue is very, very odd. Even for it to be too dramatic for Nate to actually tell anyone about it. And for young Nate to be introduced in Uncharted 3, where was Sam at that time? With Sam's arrival comes Drake's backstory, which some may see as necessary, but I always liked the mystery of not knowing and only knowing vague snippets. Though I would have loved to see Amy's version for Uncharted 4, it's clear the shift in development would have changed the dynamic of Uncharted 4, and I could already tell this when playing because it feels very, very Last of Us and takes many cues from it. One of the biggest twists I never expected in the game, besides Nate having a brother, was for Nate and Elena to have a child together. Characters in other games have had children, but it usually signifies the next generation, which can work or simply be a rehash, but for Cassie's sake, I don't see her being in Uncharted the next generation. Her purpose is for us to simply see the world through her perspective, and as we do, we learn more about what has happened to Nate, Elena, and many of the other characters over the years. It's bold to include a child for the finale, but don't expect to ever see her again. If anything, the ending for The Lost Legacy signifies a possible continuation for characters that we already know and are already established. Plus, who can forget about that surprise guest visit from Crash Bandicoot himself, am I right? Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is an incredible accomplishment for the PlayStation 4, with a fitting end for Nathan Drake, who learns that he can still be happy doing what he loves to do while evolving as a person. Though its legacy has been overshadowed by the likes of Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War over the years, it's a game everyone needs to play once. Don't want to jump into the fourth game? Buy the Nathan Drake collection. It's a stunning remaster of the first three games and a perfect way to get into a fun, adventure-filled franchise with beautiful environments and amazing characters. Who knows what the future holds for the Uncharted series, but with the upcoming movie adaptation starring Tom Holland, it's clear the series will continue to remain relevant for years to come. What were your favorite moments in Uncharted 4? Let me know in the comments, and if you could please like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.